So I changed the size of the window here from 130% to 100 in order to make more room for more code. What we're going to do now is to create basically two lines to utilize the API. So we have app now, and we have made this visible, and we're gonna make some more room here. So what we want to do, the first thing we might want to do is to just clear out any open documents, potentially open documents. So we can do this by doing app.close all documents and include unsaved. This is dangerous, but we're gonna put true here. We don't care, whatever is open, close it, get rid of it. Well, you know, this is just experimental work now. What we're doing, we're just doing a little bit of labbing here, but if you wanted, you wouldn't want to do this in production, right? You're just getting rid of somebody else's work if there's anything open. So use this, be careful. So dangerous. But in our case, get rid of everything, make a clean slate such that we can create some stuff. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is to create a new part. So we are going to create a model as model doc 2, which is the latest one. This is something that SolidWorks does in order to keep so that it works on previous versions. So this might be working for SolidWorks 2014. You should always use the latest one if you're on the latest version. Okay, equal to new model doc 2. No, equal to app.new part. New part. So we want to create a new part. So if we click on debug and start, it's launching. And in my case, this is the first time I'm launching this SolidWorks, so here's the new part. Let me make the window smaller. All right. Okay, so that works. Next thing, we want to convert this part to a part document, because model actually handles many things, assemblies and drawings and such stuff. So what we want to do is actually create a part. If you want to use the part to access stuff that is just related to parts. So part as part doc. So C type, there we go. Model and part doc. Yeah, so we really don't need this because we're not gonna use any functions that are related to the part document. It's just something that I did last time, and I'm realizing that we don't really need this because we can access all the stuff that are in the model doc 2 interface. So everything we're going to do is actually related to assemblies and drawings as well. So we really don't need this. So just get rid of it. Okay, so let's say we want to make a 3D sketch now in order to draw these lines, and the best thing is to utilize a 3D sketch because we're gonna sketch in 3D. So we want to insert basically a 3D sketch. So we could Google it, but I can tell you that we can utilize model dot, and then we can look through here, insert, there's insert sketch, and here's insert 3D sketch, and we're going to utilize the second one. So, and it says update, edit, rebuild as boolean, and we're going to set this to false because it's not going to update anything. We didn't start drawing yet. Okay, so now we can actually do something inside of this sketch. So what we're going to do is draw a line from 0, 0, 0 to 0, 0, 1, just 1 millimeter in the Z direction. And how are we going to do this? Well, there exists a function model dot create, and you can see here there's a bunch of stuff that we can use, and here's one that we're going to utilize. Create line 2, and we can see what it takes as input. So P1x as double, so this is just 0, 0, P1y, so P1 and P2 start and end points, you can see it as that. So 0, 0, 0, that's the origin, and then we have in the x direction 0, y direction 0, and 1 in the z direction. Okay, but what units are these? Well, these are actually meters. SolidWorks API uses meters as a standard definition. So if we wanted this to be, you know, let's say 10 millimeters, I'm going to put 10 divided by 1000 here. Okay, so this is going to draw a line now. And let's see what this does. Let's run this. Put SolidWorks here to the side or down or anywhere. Yeah. So there's our part. Insert sketch false. Now we are in the sketch here, 3D sketch, and you can see it here as well. And now to click here, and here's our line. So there it is. So the Z direction is actually going this way. So it's not going up, it's going in the Z direction, which is fine. Okay, so we can exit out of this. So now when we rerun this, it's going to close this document, and that's why we put it here. Otherwise we would just be doing opening many parts. So if you run this again, the first thing it does is getting rid of the document. Okay, so this works. Now let's create another line that takes this point here as the last point and draws a new point. So we just copy this here and put this point as the start point here, and then we're going to go in well, 0 in the x direction. Hold on, I'm missing one point. There we go. So next point is going to go 0 in the x direction and 10 in the y direction divided by 1000, and 0 in the, or actually, yeah, 10 divided by 1000 here as well. So I want to go straight up. Okay, let's try it. Oops, I don't want to move this around. Run this and step through. So here's the first line and the second line. So you're going straight up. Zoom in a little bit. This is what we have. Now the good stuff here is we can actually move this point around now to see where it actually is. And if we just click on it, we can see that it is at 0, 10, and 10. And this one here is at 0, 0, 10. And if we grab this one, we can actually see that there's a invisible coincidence between these lines. and that's that's somewhere in the options set as a option. When points are really close to each other, then there are automatically, there's a coincidence constraint created on these. Okay, so this works great. So one last thing before we end this video is, now we want to create a fillet on both of these. How should we go about that? Well, if we look at this function here, okay, first thing probably is to just exit out of this sketch here. So now we can go and do true, so which is going to exit this. So it's not going to insert a new one, it's just going to exit out of the old one. Alright, so now when we run this last line, it's going to exit out of the sketch here, and we have the this geometry. Good, so this works. Now what we want to do is, before we exit, we want to actually create a fillet. And if we look at this function here, it's actually returning something. It's really returning an object. So what we want to do is we want to assign this object to a sketch line. So what we're going to do here now is to do dim line, call it line 1 as, and sketch line, there we go, sketch line equal to this stuff. So that's line 1, and we want to do this with this other one here. This is going to be line 2. Okay, so if we run this again, end statement, missed an equal sign here. So we have a line object here, and we have a line 2 object here. Okay, so what we can do with these now is we can do line 1 dot select. Okay, so here's the deal. Sketch line doesn't explicitly have a select method, but sketchline is inheriting from something called entity, which has a select method. And this is one way of doing it. It's not the only way, but this is one way. So if you can use select here, and it takes a boolean true or false here. So we're not gonna, you can do false. And line 2 dot select true. And what this means is just that it's going to, it's like holding the shift key here when this is true. So if we run this, it's not going to give you any runtime compile error. It's going to select this line here. See, it's selected, and when we run this one, it's going to have both of them selected. So now when both of them are selected, we can actually add a feature called fillet. So let's see here. So what we want to do here is to do model dot sketch fillet 2 and rad as double. So that's the radius. So let's see, we want to do 1 millimeter as the radius. Constrain corners as short. Let's put that to 0, and constraint corner as short. Yeah, let's do that to 0, and let's see what happens. So we run this. here's the first one selected, here's the second one selected, and the fillet, and we see here we have a fillet. And if we grab this, we should be able to see that it is constrained correctly. So this methodology works. Now, there is another way of selecting lines like these, like this here. And let's talk about that for a second before we finish this stuff. Then you have really all the tools in order to get started with this. So what we could do probably is do entity here, like so, and then line 1 dot select, and we can see here there's even a select 4. Select, come on, select 4, append as boolean, and select data. So this is false, and select data, well, nothing. Like so, copy that line, do select 2, and then put true here, because we are appending it, this selection, to the previous selection. Like so. The problem with this is that if we want to get line 1 dot endpoint, there's no endpoint now because it's an entity. That's the problem. But the good news is that you could use this as a sketch line. You can access these methods because sketchline is actually inheriting from the previous one. So this works without problem. And then of course you can get line 1 dot get endpoint and endpoint 2 as an object, because we will have to do something with these points later on. Maybe not. Okay, so enough of this stuff. This is how it looks like. If you don't know how the API works, you can just try stuff out. So you might have noticed that you get a runtime error using select 4. Here, if line 1 and 2 are sketch lines and you choose line 1 dot select 4, false and nothing, you might get this type mismatch exception. So switch to just select and get rid of the second argument here, and it should work. So let's try that, and it works fine, and it is selecting both of the features here, as we can clearly see. Now this there is an alternative way of doing this, so let me show you that approach as well. So we can comment this out for a second. So what we can do is model dot extension dot select by ID 2. Now I don't find this robust, but it actually is. It's just that when we are creating stuff from scratch like this, we know that the first line we are creating is going to be called line 1, and the second line is going to be called line 2, and so on. So we have to keep track of the line names, and yeah, so that's something to be careful with. But okay, so we could write the name as a string here, which is line 1 in this case, and this is a sketch. Let's see here, it has to be all caps, sketch segment, and 0, no, here 0 0 0, append as boolean false, mark as integer 0, call out nothing, and select option 0. Okay, copy this. This is going to be line 2 as sketch segment, and append true. So what is going to happen? Let's run this, And we can see here that the first one got selected and the second one is also selected. Okay, so now you have two ways of doing selections here, and it is up to you which one you choose, but be careful, because when you do this programmatically, in this case here, we're creating objects and we can actually store them, and we can store as many as we want, and we don't need to know their names. But in this case, you need to know the name, and you have to type in the name as a string, not as programmatically, how would you say, convenient as you might guess. But okay, so two ways of doing the same thing. I prefer this one here, and the reasons for this will be obvious once you have a set of points and you need to loop through a bunch of lines and create a bunch of lines, and you're not going to create them, hardcode them like this. Suggestion here is to use lists or arrays, because we know how many lines we need to create, so this works much better. Okay, that's enough about lines. Let's move on.